4 astronauts inside the Integrity capsule are currently falling toward Earth at Mach 35. At this velocity, the atmosphere isn't just air, it's a wall of friction generating temperatures over 5,000 degrees. This extreme speed is the direct result of their distance. This lofted trajectory reached 252,756 miles from Earth, taking the crew further into deep space than any humans in history. For over 5 decades, that distance record belonged to the crew of Apollo 13. By pushing 4,000 miles past the old 1970 record, the Artemis II crew has gained an immense amount of gravitational potential energy. Every mile gained on the way out translates to higher velocity on the way back. To survive the landing, the capsule must now find a way to bleed off all that kinetic energy without incinerating the crew. Survival depends entirely on the heat shield. It is designed to take the brunt of the 5,000-degree plasma, using a chemical process to absorb and carry heat away from the cabin. However, during the uncrewed Artemis I test, the avcoat shield material suffered from unexpected chunking. High-pressure gases became trapped under the surface, causing pieces of the shield to crack and break off. If the shield chunks during this crewed mission, the loss of material could leave the underlying structure exposed to the plasma, vaporizing the spacecraft and everyone inside. Fixing the hardware would have delayed the mission by 18 months. Instead, NASA chose to fly with the existing shield, gambling on a radical new flight profile to manage the heat. This is the lofted profile. Unlike the traditional skip entry, which allows the shield to cool between atmospheric dips, this steeper path keeps the capsule in constant contact with the heat. Keeping the shield hot allows the avcoat material to breathe properly. This ensures that gases can escape through the char layer, allowing the material to flake off smoothly and carry the thermal energy away. As the capsule hits the densest part of the atmosphere, temperatures peak at 5,000 degrees. The friction is so intense that the surrounding plasma cuts off all radio signals to the ground. For 40 minutes, the crew is alone in a fireball. They are the first humans to test this experimental entry profile, and they are doing it with no way to call for help. The static finally clears. As voice communications return, Mission Control confirms that the heat shield performed as intended, managing the thermal load without any significant chunking. With the heat dissipated, the capsule begins its final deceleration. A sequence of 11 parachutes deploys in stages, slowing the craft from thousands of miles per hour to just 20. The capsule hits the water off the coast of San Diego. Within minutes, U.S. Navy recovery teams arrive to extract the crew and secure the spacecraft. This precision landing validates the Artemis architecture. It demonstrates that the SLS and Orion systems can successfully manage the extreme physics of a return from the moon. The technical success of Artemis II confirms that these human-rated systems can sustain a crew of 4 for a 10-day voyage into deep space. This clears the path for Artemis III, the mission that will finally return humans to the lunar surface to begin building a base at the South Pole. This flight marks the transition from short-term lunar exploration to a permanent presence on another world. Beyond the engineering data, the crew returned with a specific observation from the lunar far side. From 400,000 kilometers away, looking back from behind the moon, the crew saw our world as a tiny lifeboat suspended in a vast black universe. In that silence, they captured a perspective of our planet that hadn't been witnessed by human eyes since the 1970s. In our next video, we'll reveal the full story behind that image, a photograph that rivals the famous Earthrise of 1968. Get ready for the Earthset. For 40 minutes, the 4 astronauts aboard the Orion capsule were cut off from all contact. As they passed into the moon's shadow, their spacecraft vanished from NASA's tracking screens. While Mission Control waited in silence, the crew was isolated in the dark, watching a view of the lunar surface that no human had witnessed since 1972. This is the result of that isolation, an Earthset. The photo captures our planet as a thin, delicate crescent, sinking below the gray, cratered limb of the moon. The shot echoes the 1968 Earthrise photograph from Apollo 8, but the Artemis II crew captured this image from a distance of over 250,000 miles, the farthest point humans have ever traveled from their home. To the 4 people inside the capsule, the image represented the absolute edge of physical reach. Seeing Earth as a tiny, distant object forced the crew to confront the reality of their isolation in the void. Reaching this vantage point required the Artemis II mission to exceed a record that had stood for 56 years. That record was set by the crew of Apollo 13. In 1970, James Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert reached 248,655 miles from Earth, though only because an explosion forced them to loop around the moon to return home. This 2D map shows the free return trajectory designed for Artemis II. By extending the flight path past the moon's far side, Orion reached a new maximum of 252,756 miles. Lunar gravity then slingshots the spacecraft back toward Earth without a major engine burn. But after breaking the distance record, the crew faced a new problem. That same gravity was now pulling them toward the most violent phase of the mission, the return through the atmosphere. The capsule hit the Earth's atmosphere at Mach 39, roughly 24,000 miles per hour. At that speed, the air itself becomes a wall of resistance. This cross-section shows the 16.5-foot heat shield protecting the crew from a layer of 5,000-degree plasma. To protect the spacecraft, engineers chose a steep entry angle, minimizing the time the shield was exposed to thermal extremes. After 10 minutes of radio silence during the descent, the capsule's parachutes deployed. The ship, named Integrity, splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego. Recovery teams from NASA and the U.S. Navy immediately intercepted the spacecraft, lifting the astronauts from the water and transporting them to the recovery ship. The crew had survived the mechanical limits of the spacecraft, but stepping out of the isolation of deep space and back into human civilization proved to be its own challenge. Less than 24 hours after their splashdown, the 4 astronauts were standing on a stage at Ellington Field in Houston, facing a crowd of hundreds. Commander Reed Wiseman spoke to the audience about the invisible bond formed between the crew. He noted that the experience of being 200,000 miles away from home changed how they understood their relationships with their families. Mission specialist Christina Koch focused on the overwhelming blackness she saw from the Orion window. She described the Earth as a lifeboat, a small, shared vessel keeping its passengers alive in an otherwise hostile universe. Jeremy Hansen challenged the audience to see themselves in the mission's success. He argued that the astronauts were merely a mirror reflecting the effort of the thousands of people across 14 countries who built the spacecraft. The mission proved the spacecraft could survive the journey, but the crew's reflections on the lifeboat suggested that the most significant discovery was the vulnerability of the human experience when separated from its home. The 10-day flight confirmed that the Space Launch System and the Orion capsule can sustain human life during the stresses of deep space travel. This technical validation is the requirement for the next phase of the program, returning to the lunar surface to build a permanent base and preparing for the first crewed missions to Mars. While the hardware provides the transportation, the mission's value was defined by the crew's human observations. Their ability to interpret the lunar surface and communicate the fragility of our lifeboat is what transforms a test flight into the foundation for a permanent presence in space. This concludes our coverage of the Artemis II mission and its 10-day journey around the moon. The data gathered by these 4 astronauts is now being used to plan Artemis III, the mission that will put human footprints back on the lunar surface. Following this story requires a shared curiosity about our place in the cosmos. Subscribe to join us for the next chapter of the Artemis program.